Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of X's and O's. I'm Eric Bunnell, along with my co-host,
Jay Lenander.
And today we are here to talk all about the Final Four. And the first game we'll get into is the first game of the day. Loyola Chicago and Michigan. Loyola Cinderella story. And Michigan, a team that probably a lot of people expected to get there, or didn't expect to get there because of North Carolina, but then they got, so I know some people picked them to get there, but what's the most intriguing part of this matchup?
Oh, I mean, when you look at a 3 versus an 11 in the Final Four, one tends to gravitate towards the 11. Loyola Chicago, of course, was sort of seen as the underdog coming in. They've been this story that's kind of been running throughout. Everyone's been doubting them each time they come up to a new matchup. It's like, oh, Loyola Chicago, can they do it again? Can the magic keep happening? You always see those kind of articles whenever something like this happens. All those journalists want to get out their stories about, oh, are they going to be able to do it this week? Are they going to be able to do it this week? Are they going to be able to do it this week? And the story kind of remains the same. Are they going to be able to do it this week? Michigan has come out and surprised a lot of people. Their team has been stout. I'm pretty sure they won the Big Ten this year, didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah, they won the Big Ten tournament. They didn't win the Big Ten regular season.
Big Ten tournament. That's
that
what
was Michigan State who won it, but they went on to knock off Michigan State in the Big Ten.
So they're the Big Ten tournament winners. They shocked there, and ever since they've been on a roll, no one's been able to catch up with them. This is sort of an all-around team that's got a lot going for it. But the story is still focused on Loyola as the 11th seed, by far the lowest seed still remaining in the tournament. And it's, will the magic continue to happen? A lot of, don't want to say memes, but memes and commentary about Sister Jean and sort of the aura of this 11th seed that's come out of nowhere to be the underdog, the cliche Cinderella story of this March Madness tournament. And of course that's the team to watch right now. They've won 2 games. These are both teams that have won games at the last minute on very miraculous buzzer beaters. Some of the best moments of this tournament have come from these 2 teams. And with that in mind, it would be best for everyone if this game sort of comes down to a similar situation where it's going to be one final shot for one of these teams. It will be a make or break miracle shot for one side or the other. That would be, at least early, sort of the prediction of what could happen here.
And you mentioned how both these teams have won on miraculous shots. Michigan, they almost got beat by Houston if it wasn't for Jordan Poole and his Air Jordan shot where he just spread his legs and threw it up like he was Air Jordan. Mm-hmm. And then they boat raced Texas A&M the following week. They were up, I think it was 24 at halftime. They go on to win the game by 27. But I do like the Loyola Chicago. I think they have an opportunity to win because not many teams in the country. I think they're the only team in the country where all 5 scorers are averaging above double figures. Mm-hmm. You don't see that many, and they all can shoot the 3. Mm-hmm. How many teams do you see that from in the country?
Not many.
I mean, I can think of Duke maybe with Wendell Carter, Marvin Bagley. They didn't shoot it at a very high clip.
Yeah.
We'll get to them, even though not in the Final Four, we'll get to them a little bit later. Villanova, they got that. They're shooting, I think, 45%. We'll get that matchup after the commercial, when we come back from the commercial break. But I think Loyola Chicago and Sister Jean, I think they're going to surprise Michigan. I think they're going to be that first 11 seed to break through to the national championship game. Otherwise, the stage might be too big for them, like the past 11 seeds in VCU and George Mason, who all lost to the eventual national champions, and LSU back in 1986, I believe it was. Can't remember my correct years, so don't quote me on that. But I think it's going to be an intriguing game. I know many people are worried about the other semifinal game, the traditional Blue Blood powerhouse game. But I think this game is going to surprise a lot of people, and I think it's going to be high scoring because they both can shoot the ball.
Yeah, I definitely think that Loyola, the advantage they have is they've got a lot of passion. They've got a lot of just moxie coming in here to this game. I mean, Michigan's as a 3 seed, they've been building up this momentum a lot longer. With the Big Ten tournament, that was really their first spark. They caught them here. Loyola's spark has been that first game against Miami, that last shot that really propelled them past and gave them that first upset. That's really what's been carrying them on ever since. And I sort of think that is going to be the push, that they've really got the good mindset. That's how they've been able to get this far. That's how they've been able to beat all the teams in the past. and I think it's going to happen again. I think Loyola is going to be able to ride this magic into the final, into the championship. Maybe not winning the championship, but into the national championship. It just seems like it makes sense. Like, they've been overcoming the odds this entire tournament. What's one more? Is really the mindset.
I mean, that's true. They also got another little chip on their shoulder, kind of like NDSU or the South Dakota States have going into the tournament, is they're not really considered one of those Power 5 conference teams, and they have 30 plus. I think they have 30 wins on the season. It's got to be right around there. Now with the tournament, I'm sure they have 30 plus wins, but they're playing with a chip on their shoulder because they weren't considered a favorite. They weren't. A lot of people picked them to beat Miami because 11-6, anything can happen. But the Tennessee game, not a lot of people saw that one coming on the last-second shot yet again with 3.5 seconds left, I think it was. But Michigan, you're going to come into this game because everyone's going to be talking about Loyola Chicago. Oh, Loyola Chicago is going to beat them even though Michigan's favored. Loyola Chicago this, Loyola Chicago that. Michigan's also going to have a chip on their shoulder and saying that we deserve to be back in this national championship game since their last one ended in defeat to Louisville in 2013.
Yep.
But I think for whatever reason, Michigan is just getting buried as the underdog, and they're going to keep saying, people keep saying, and I hear it all along. But so I think they're going to come out and play with a chip on their shoulder, kind of like Loyola Chicago will, but also who's going to shoot the ball better? That's what it's going to come down to. Because Loyola they don't really have the defense. Yeah, they held Kansas State to, I think, 58 points.
Yeah, it was a low score.
It was a low-scoring game. And Kansas State, who's a defensive team in the pyramid, has been holding opponents to under 60 every game, and now it's Loyola Chicago who boat raced them for 70, but I just don't know how to pick this matchup because my mind says Michigan because they're the better defensive team, better shooting, they play in a bigger conference, and they played better teams all year. But it's March, Cinderellas. So my heart says Loyola Chicago, but I just don't know how I can pick this game.
It's a tough matchup, and it might even be a tougher matchup to pick than the 1-1 on the other side of the bracket. And when we come back, we'll be talking about that 1-1 matchup. We'll be going in depth about the big Kansas-Villanova matchup. From Herd and Horns, when we come back.
Welcome back to X's and O's from Herd and Horns, here to talk about the number one matchup with Villanova and the other number one, Kansas, who survived an overtime thriller. Jay, this matchup features two teams that love the three-point ball. Villanova and Kansas both shoot it at above a 40% clip. But Villanova, playing in the Big East, did they get the competition that they needed like Kansas did?
No, I don't think so. But I think more importantly than, say, the Big East, I think it's been in the tournament. Villanova hasn't hit as hard of teams as Kansas has. I mean, Texas Tech was a good team, but Villanova kind of showed the difference in power between those two teams. Villanova really hasn't come up against a really strong matchup, unlike Kansas, who had a great game against Duke that went all the way to overtime. Out of all the games I've caught in the NCAA tournament this year, that was probably the best one. It was a breathtaker from the beginning to the end, and that overtime period was great. And Kansas just fought hard through fouls and turnovers and all sorts of calls. They were able to beat a very good team that tested their limits. And I think Kansas, having been tested in that last game, is going to be more in tune coming into this Villanova matchup. Also, Villanova's been having a lot of success recently. They've been making the national championship game fairly consistently, and I think that's going to get to their head this time. Kansas has been overlooked. This is their first time getting back into the Final Four since 2012, something like that, and that's going to be on their mind. They finally got back. They're going to want it more. I think Villanova hasn't been tested hard enough. Kansas's head is in the game right now, and I think they're going to be able to use that to get past Villanova.
I think you hit my point right on the head with Kansas being tested. They got tested by Penn. Yes, they're a 16 seed. We watched a 16 fall earlier this year for Virginia. I think the committee kind of got that 16 seed Penn wrong. I think they could have been a 14 or a 13 seed because of how well they played and how defensive sound they are. They're kind of like a mini Virginia, as I said last week. Like Clemson is also a mini Virginia. You're seeing a lot of these teams becoming more defensive minded, and they faced a tough test in Seton Hall, who Villanova played, I believe it was once or twice this year, and I know they beat them. They beat them pretty soundly, as Villanova you expect. But in this Villanova's test, it really come until the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. The Sweet 16, they faced a tough West Virginia, as we call them, Press Virginia in the Big 12, and they forced some turnovers, and Villanova was down, and I was thinking, is West Virginia going to be able to scoot up to the Elite Eight and go on to play Texas Tech and set up maybe even an All Big 12, or one side could have been an All Big 12 Final Four, but I don't know. I think the Villanova, I agree with you there. I think Villanova, this is their toughest test. Kansas had a very good test. I know when I was watching the game, being a Kansas fan, when Grayson Allen threw up the last shot when it was 72-72 and it rimmed out, my heart literally went from, just dropped down to my stomach, and I was like, oh boy, it's March, it's in, it's like game over. And then when it went out, I was like, okay, now Kansas. I knew Kansas had the opportunity, and their ability to shoot the three came in big. Malik Newman, he's stepping up. He's playing alongside Devontae Graham, Svi Mikhailuk. Villanova, yeah, they have guys that can shoot the three, but they don't play and they're very good defensively, but they don't play a team sound ball like Kansas does, and they rely too much on the three-point ball.
Yep. I definitely think Kansas is the experienced team here. That's kind of their billing coming into the season. They got some big seniors, whereas when they went up against Duke, that's a lot of freshmen and Grayson Allen sort of as the veteran leader. And that's one of the biggest reasons why Kansas was able to overcome that game, is that things got rough near the end. People were fouling out, a lot of fouls all over the place, and they were able to force overtime. That's where that experience really comes into play, is when you're in overtime, you're in the nitty-gritty of the game. Having those older players is really where that gives you the experience. And I think Kansas is going to continue to be able to carry that, potentially through this game, potentially in the national championship. Kansas has a lot to look forward to this year.
And people are overlooking the fact 10 years ago, Kansas played in San Antonio, the exact same spot. Mario's Miracle in the national championship game extended into overtime, where they went on to win it 75-68 over Memphis, a squad that had to forfeit that season because all grades, academics. Won't get into that stuff later. If you haven't seen Mario's Miracle, go look it up on YouTube. It's a great shot. I highly suggest watching it, being a Kansas fan. But that Kansas team, if you take out Udoka Azubuike, the big guy, I think he's 250, 260 in the middle, take him out and you put him into Sosa, they can run. They can press the floor. You watch, I believe it was Seth Greenberg on ESPN talking about how they spread the floor. All the guards have a lane, and they're all capable of finding up a three, just like Villanova. But I think the X factor in this matchup, is the point guards, and Brunson and Graham, and who's going to create more plays because they're both in consideration for the National Player of the Year. And I think it just comes down to those two on who's going to will them more. And I know Kansas wants revenge from 2 years ago when they lost to Villanova in the Elite Eight, when they thought they should have went on to the Final Four, and maybe they even got Villanova's seed wrong. But as Villanova went on to win the national championship, so it doesn't matter. Losing to the national champion is always easier. But I think this Kansas team, very experienced, very talented, after now being to the Final Four again since first time since 2012, and been knocking on the door. I think they're going to have energy, and I think they're going to be fueled by the crowd that's going to go down from Lawrence to San Antonio, and I think they're going to cut down the nets.
So that's your prediction for this game.
Yep.
Sort of heard what your thoughts were on the other game. Now looking at the Final Four teams, what are going to be your final predictions for this game? Who do you think wins both those games, and who do you think comes out with the national championship?
I think it's Michigan on the other side. I know people want me to pick Loyola Chicago because that's the obvious Cinderella story, but I think Michigan, their three-point shooting and their defense is just too much. On the other side, I think Kansas beats Villanova, and I think Kansas beats Michigan in a barn burner. It's probably going to come down to a last-second shot, but who knows? I think Kansas cuts down the nets in San Antonio for the second time in 10 years.
I think I might have to agree with you. I mean, I'd like to say that Villanova would be able to win because that's who I picked in my bracket at the beginning, and it's always good to at least get something back from that whole process of at least being able to pick a winner. But I do think Kansas will be able to outlast them, like you said. I'll say that Loyola will be able to continue their magic past the Final Four, get into that national championship, and then that's where I think the magic ends. I think Kansas is too old of a team, too smart of a team to let Loyola play the kind of game they want to play. So I think that Kansas is also going to be able to take it in the national championship, but I do think they're going to have to get through Loyola to do so.
And many people are forgetting that Kansas lost to McDonald's All-American and Billy Preston earlier in the year due to financial restrictions or financial issues of what car he was driving around campus. And so they're doing this with basically 7-8 guys coming off the bench, and that's pretty remarkable considering you have Villanova, who I think they play 6 or 7 deep. So it's going to be a test of who's got more energy, and it's just going to be a great game. The first game, Loyola Chicago, is on TBS this year. It's tipping off at 5:09, and then Kansas Villanova will follow approximately 8:49 or 7:49 Central Time on TBS, and the national championship will also be on TBS. But yeah, we're both going with Kansas to cut down the nets in San Antonio. Well, we'll see if our predictions come true on Monday night, or even we'll see if come true on Saturday night to see if Kansas and Jay wants Loyola Chicago to cut down or go to face the national champs, our national champs, Kansas, and then Michigan. I want Michigan to win, but we'll see. Thank you for watching this edition of X's and O's live here from Herd and Horns. You can catch us right here on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. and also on our YouTube channel, Bison Information Network, and our TV channel, Bin 484. Thank you for watching.